You are listening to the Primitive Intelligence Podcast, episode 411, the Amelia Earhart conspiracy. I don't have a clever name for this one. This was an actual real person. I don't want to be disrespectful by coming up with some weird name for it. So it's just the Amelia Earhart conspiracy. I hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving, had a safe and happy Thanksgiving. I got out and did some backpacking, had a fun trip. It was cold and it snowed and it was awesome. So that's what I did. Also ate some turkey and a lot of food. It was a good time. But Thanksgiving is now over, and it is time to talk about conspiracies. So episode 411 of the Primitive Intelligence Podcast starts now. Who exactly was Amelia Earhart? Well, she was an aviation pioneer back in the 1920s and 1930s. She was the first woman to fly solo above 14,000 feet, solo across the United States, solo across the Atlantic Ocean, and was attempting to be the first woman to fly around the globe, to circumnavigate the globe. And this was back in 1937. It was Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan. They were attempting to circumnavigate the globe, like I said, and they disappeared over the Central Pacific. They were last seen in Lae, New Guinea, on July 2nd, 1937, as they left Lae for their next stop, which was Howland Island, about 2,500 miles away. And then they disappeared. They were never seen again. So what exactly happened? Are there actually any answers? Maybe. There's a bunch of theories, and we're going to talk about those theories right now. I've got 5 here, and 3 are a little nutty. 2 are more plausible, with one of those being the most likely scenario. Here's some of the crazier conspiracy theories. So we're going to start with the 3 kind of out there conspiracy theories. The first was that she lived and changed her identity. A book that came out in 1970 called Amelia Earhart Lives. I haven't read the book. I just read about the book. But this book claims that they did crash. So they were flying to Howland Island. They crashed. Not sure where, but they crashed and survived. They were captured by the Japanese, and then they were rescued by the U.S. forces. And after this whole ordeal of crashing and surviving, being captured and rescued, she changed her identity to Irene Bolam and moved to New Jersey to live as a housewife. Seems kind of bizarre. But this is what this book claims. After the book came out, though, there was a little bit of a problem. There actually was an Irene Bolam who lived in New Jersey who heard about this book and that claimed that she was Amelia Earhart, and she filed a lawsuit against the publisher and against the author of the book, denying the claims. What happened with that lawsuit, I don't know. Highly unlikely that is actually what happened. The next conspiracy is that she was a spy for the U.S. government, and that the flight around the world was just a cover story. Now, this, 1937 is before World War II, but tensions were starting to mount, and the U.S. was keeping an eye on Japan. So the idea is that she was spying on the Japanese for the U.S., and these flights that she was doing, especially this circumnavigation of the globe, which took a flight path really close to areas that Japan controlled and was patrolling, that she was actually spying on what they were doing. And then either she was shot down or forced to land. Some people say that she was taken, her and Fred Noonan were taken captive. Some people say that they died in a crash. Now, the Japanese government has no record of this. They don't claim to have any kind of indication that they ever captured Amelia Earhart or shot her down. But just because there's no record of it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And this is interesting. We're going to keep this one in mind because there is a link to one of the more plausible theories with this one. I don't know that it necessarily proves that she was a spy, but there may be something to it. And then the third crazy conspiracy, this one is nutty. In 2015, there was a blog called New Dimensions. I didn't even look to see if they're still around. Let's see if New Dimensions blog is still around. New Dimensions blog. And after a quick search, I can't find it. I don't think it still exists. But this blog claims that Earhart and Noonan were saved by a race called the Agarthans. Now, the Agarthans are from the land of Agartha. It's a kingdom that is said to be located in the Earth's core. So you got to believe in hollow Earth for this one. And this dates back. I mean, this isn't like something new. This didn't just come out in 2015. The legend of Agartha was detailed in an account in the 19th century by a French occultist. It's got a little life to it, the hollow Earth and Agartha. And maybe I'll talk about that in another episode. But so according to this New Dimensions blog, the Agarthans used their teleportation technology to rescue Earhart and Noonan before they crashed or before they hit the water. So either they were running out of fuel and they were crashing, or they were shot down and they're crashing, and these Agarthans were like, we're going to save these two. And they teleported them into the center of the Earth. I don't know why. I don't know why. Why wouldn't they teleport them to like Howland Island? And to be this crazy story, just take the plane and teleport it to the island or somewhere where they could be found. I don't know. But there are, this may have been fueled by more than one sci-fi TV show that I remember seeing, where Amelia Earhart was found in space or on a spaceship or on another planet, having been rescued by aliens. Star Trek comes to mind. I just remember there was a Star Trek episode where Amelia Earhart was one of the people that they found on a spaceship. They're like in suspended animation or something like that, and they had been rescued by aliens for some reason. And I think maybe this New Dimensions blog kind of took its inspiration from that and this hollow Earth theory. So that one's kind of crazy. That one's nutty. So those are the crazy ones. And I do have links to these stories where I'm getting this information. I've got a link to a CNN article, a Newsweek article, an Insider article, some Wikipedia stuff, just some things that I've found. But I'll put the links down the bottom so you can read these more in depth. Now, what do we know about what actually happened? We do know that Earhart and Noonan were flying from Ley to Howland Island. We do know that they had a support ship, the U.S. Coast Guard vessel Itasca, and that was their relay ship, their safety ship, their shadow. Their radio communications would go through there. They tried to use that ship as a relay, because radio, we're talking the 1930s. Communication was not what it is today, and there were issues with the Itasca keeping radio contact with Earhart and Noonan. But we do know that was the ship that was used. And we do know that Earhart and Noonan were sending communications back to the Itasca as they were looking for Howland Island. They were having a hard time finding it. Howland Island is very small. And they were having an issue finding it, and they were running low on fuel. Now, there was never a mayday. There was never a call of them going down. That doesn't mean they didn't make one. The Itasca just didn't receive one. And once they realized they were not getting communication back from Earhart and Noonan, the Itasca immediately went to the region where they should have been and started a search. And I think they searched for like 2 weeks. The Itascans, another, like a whole convoy of Coast Guard ships, went looking until they called off the search because they couldn't find them. So we do know that did in fact happen. And because of that information, there's a couple different theories on what actually happened to them. Now, they may have just crashed in the ocean and died. That is a possibility. There's also a theory that's got maybe a little bit of proof to it, maybe not, that they didn't make it to Howland. They couldn't find Howland. They got off course, and they landed on an island at the time named Gardner Island, and I'm going to murder the name of this, I know it. It's now called Nikumaroro Island. Probably got that wrong. But it's about 400 miles southeast of Howland Island, which in airplane terms, I guess, isn't that far off. About 2,600 miles away from Ley, New Guinea. So 100 miles further away, which would explain why they ran out of fuel. And in a straight line, 100 miles on plane, not really all that far. Now, some people say that Earhart sent out radio distress calls for 5 days after they lost contact. Now, these reports are sporadic. A lot of people believe that the distress calls that were received were legitimately Earhart, but I couldn't find a lot of sources that said anything about this. So, did she send out distress calls? I don't know. Some people say yes, some people say no. They don't know if the plane crashed in the ocean and they made it to shore, or if they were able to land the plane on this Nikumaroro Island. Not sure how that happened. Maybe they landed the plane or got close enough to the island that they could get the plane up on shore and then it washed away. But there have been many excursions to this island to see what they can find. They've looked for plane wreckage. They've looked for everything they could find. They've never found the plane. I think they've been back as recently as 2019. But bones were found on the island. And in 2019, these bones were studied, and indications were found that they were indeed Earhart's bones. They could have been Earhart's. It gave this theory a lot of credibility that they had bones, and they were going back to see if they could find the plane wreckage, and then suddenly the bones got lost. They lost them. You'd think somebody might put those in a more secure spot. Don't lose these bones of Amelia Earhart if you're trying to prove that that's where she landed. So, is that true? It's plausible. Be a lot more believable if they didn't lose those bones or if they could find the plane wreckage. And that leads us to the fifth theory, which I think, personally, with information I found, is the most plausible next to they crashed, they ran out of fuel, landed in the ocean, and didn't survive. That's probably the most likely. This would be the second most likely. And actually, I'm going to change that. I'm going to say they're one and the same. That they could be the same thing. They may have crash landed, may have landed in the ocean. But the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands are about 900 miles northwest of Howland Island. Much closer to Ley. Only about 1,800 miles away instead of 2,500 miles away. If they were searching for Howland and they were doing any kind of circular pattern to see if they could find, like circling around, see if they could find this island, it's not inconceivable that they could have gotten close enough to the Marshall Islands that this theory is possible. And there's some proof to this one. So, a photo was found in the National Archives that shows a woman sitting on a dock in the Marshall Islands that resembles Earhart. Now, she's got her back to the camera, but Earhart was known for wearing pants. Today, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but in the 1930s, that was kind of a big deal. She was wearing pants. And the haircut looks similar to Amelia Earhart. And I will put a link to this photo, to the story that shows this photo, and you can look at it yourself. There's more people on the dock, but you can see this woman sitting on the edge of the dock, kind of half turned, like looking back towards the camera. And to her left is a man standing kind of with some other people. And they've done some facial recognition. It's kind of blurry. You can't really make out the face. But Fred Noonan had a very distinct hairline. And the man in this photo has the same very sharp, kind of widow's peak style receding hairline as Fred Noonan. With how similar the woman in the photo looks and how similar the man in the photo looks, they think it's pretty high probability that this was Earhart and Noonan. Now, in the background, there's a Japanese, a couple ships, and one of them is, I think it's called the Kuru, the Koshu. So there's a ship in the background of this photo called the Koshu, and it is hauling something that looks to be about the same size of a plane, of the plane that Earhart and Noonan were flying. So not only do you have this woman and this man in this photo who resemble Earhart and Noonan, but there is a Japanese ship that's got a hauling something that looks to be the size of an airplane, of the airplane that they were flying. Now, you take that into account, and then the story is that locals claim to have seen the plane crash before Earhart and Noonan were captured. Native school kids claim that they saw Earhart in custody and taken away by the Japanese, and that they were taken to Saipan, which is in the Mariana Islands. I think that's the right island group. Quite a ways away, but it was Japanese controlled. There's also a woman who was a child at the time, but lived on Saipan and claims to have seen Earhart in custody by the Japanese, and not knowing who she was, but remembers hearing the adults talking about the woman flyer. And there weren't a lot of, Earhart was known as the first of a lot of things in aviation. And I got to go back to this picture and look at it as I'm thinking about this. And yeah, you know what? I can see it. It does look like, now again, it's a black and white photo. It's kind of grainy. Could it be somebody else in these? Could this be two other people in this photo? It's absolutely possible. It could be two other people, but the fact that it looks like them, and there's something that looks like maybe a plane that's being transported by this Japanese ship. People claim to have seen her. Children claim to have seen her. This woman who, as a child, claimed to not only have seen her, but heard adults talking about a woman flyer. And you circle back to she was a spy conspiracy where she was shot down or forced to land. And then if this happened near the Marshall Islands, this would all make sense. Now, was she a spy? I don't know. But it's looking more likely that they survived the crash, or they were forced down, they were captured, and taken prisoner by the Japanese. And the Japanese have no record of this. Does it mean it didn't happen? No. I'm sure there's things that a lot of governments and militaries did in and around World War II that they don't have any record of. It's possible. This one is actually very plausible that, yeah, she was taken hostage or captured, that she was captured by the Japanese. They both were, that Noonan and Earhart were captured by the Japanese, and they died in custody. And there's just no record of it. Or maybe there is record of it and it's not released. I don't know why it wouldn't be released, but this does seem like it is a pretty good explanation for what happened. I think it's just as likely that they ran out of fuel, ditched in the ocean, and didn't survive. But if they did survive, I think this may be the actual case. Go take a look at the photos. The photo, and make up your own mind on this one. But yeah, and this story that's talking about this comes from NBC News. Now, say what you will about the news media, but this seems to be a pretty legitimate story. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So let me know what you thought about this one. Kind of getting this one out in a rush because of the holiday weekend. So hopefully it turns out all right. Hope you guys like it. Hope it makes you think more. No link to team sports mentality in this one. Don't have it. Can't think of any way this connects to team sports mentality. Maybe there is. I'm not seeing it. Who knows? But I hope you guys liked it. Think more. I will see you in the next episode. No, I won't see you. Well, on a video. I still won't see you. You'll see me. I'll talk to you in the next episode.